Most of us know what it's like when life feels meaningful. We're going somewhere, we're doing something and it matters. We feel alive, but life doesn't always feel meaningful, and when it doesn't, it can be very difficult to find the energy or direction, and everything becomes a bit lifeless. Some say that the way society works these days isn't helping, that there's a kind of meaning crisis. So if meaning matters and might be in some kind of crisis, what can we actually do about it? Can we help our own life become more meaningful? And how do we even make sense of this kind of question? My name's Rich Watkins, and in this video I want to offer a broad sweep over the work of John Vervaeke, a cognitive scientist from the University of Toronto who is concerned with meaning. He came to prominence with a 50-hour YouTube series entitled Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. It's a magnificently ambitious project, and it covers the whole history of philosophy, jumping between and across different wisdom traditions, pulling in concepts from many disciplines and tying it all together in a coherent picture informed by the sharp edge of cognitive science. What seems to have resonated deeply with a lot of people is that whilst he's an academic, his work moves beyond thinking thoughts and into the realm of living well. He's also a teacher of meditation and Tai Chi, bringing that in, and a prolific conversationalist, coming alive in deep dialogue with many different people. To me, his work really catches on something, and it has the flavour of wisdom. But his ideas are complex, and some of his vocabulary is specific and unfamiliar, so it's not the easiest thing to pick up. So how do you know if it's something for you? Is there a 10-minute version of the 50 hours? Well, of course not. But I did recently gather with a group who were asking these kinds of questions. How can people get a taste of John Vervaeke's ideas more quickly? And here is our inevitably imperfect attempt at John Vervaeke in 10 minutes. 5 suggestions for a more meaningful life. It won't give you the precision or rigor, but it might help you get a grip on some themes. Okay, let's start with the good news. To John Vervaeke, there is a path to a more meaningful life. And we know this because we all have meaningful moments, experiences of being in flow and at home with our situation. And maybe when we're with people we love, or at play, or in flow with our work. And these moments give us clues towards what it takes to find more of these moments. And John Vervaeke says we're better not to take what traditions call enlightenment as some perfect final state, but as an ongoing process of shedding more light on life, of becoming wiser, of becoming more adept at facing the persistent, perennial problems that humans all face at some point. Things like anxiety, alienation, the absurdity of it all of which are related to meaning. Look, life's complex and there certainly isn't a recipe, but here are 5 suggestions. 1. Relate beyond the intellectual. Western society has got caught up believing that what matters most is ideas and beliefs. But to John Vervaeke, this is a massive error. It's not that ideas don't matter, but that they are insufficient to living a meaningful life. We need to give more attention to developing our presence, really being with life, not just looking to get things from it. And we need to pay attention to the quality of our relationships, because it's actually how we relate to other people, to the world, and to ourselves that has us feeling at home in our lives. And this at-homeness is more meaningful than concepts. A meaningful life is a kind of dancing with the situations we face. Wisdom traditions have been saying this for centuries, and contemporary cognitive science agrees. We are not just logical thinkers living in our brains, but embodied beings who are embedded in a particular context. And we process our life not in the abstract, but through what we actually do in the real world, and through the tools, technologies, and words that we use. 2. See how you see. What is meaningful depends on the way you see the world. So we need to get wise to what affects our vision. If you wear a pair of pink glasses, the world looks pink. You have a pink frame through which you're looking. And we have all sorts of frames that we're looking through. our values, our sense of what success means, our political ideas, even things like the English language. And like our glasses, we often forget that these frames are there. They don't get our attention because we're looking through them. But what we can do is take them off and look at them. And when we stop looking through our frames and start looking at them, we can see how we see. Is this the best way to look at this situation? How is this frame influencing my vision? And is that influence appropriate right now? What would be alternative frames to look through? When you see how you see, it can be quite an existential shock to realize that what you thought was the way the world actually is instead how you're looking at it. But this is important work. To John Vervaeke, it's how we get insight. And we've probably all had a meaningful insight, some kind of realization that there's a new, better way to see the world that somehow puts us into a more real relationship with what's out there. Finding better ways to see, of course, is not a quick fix, but an important ongoing work. 3, cut through the bullshit. It's not just that we have the wrong frames to look at the world. It's also that society is full of bullshit. Now, bullshit technically isn't lying. Lying is when you know the truth but decide, for whatever reason, to misrepresent it. With bullshit, the truth doesn't even matter. The bullshitter is concerned with its own agenda, not with the truth, and often actively invested in avoiding or obscuring complex or inconvenient truths. Look around you. We're surrounded by spin, drowning in bullshit, and this is part of our meaning crisis. But there's another, perhaps deeper problem. You see, as humans, we are self-deceptive. And this doesn't mean that we lie to ourselves, but that we bullshit ourselves. We spin ourselves stories to try and look good. We're actively invested in avoiding complex or inconvenient truths. And a good first step for a more meaningful life is to admit the bullshit that's going on in here. And this will have us better equipped to cut through all the bullshit that's out there. 4, don't go it alone. If meaningful life is about relating, we're going to need good relationships. And good relationships are mutually transformational. We open each other up to more and more wisdom, and we can experience way more genuine insight together than alone. We can more easily cut through the bullshit. And this is amplified in genuine community where different people bring different perspectives and everyone has their place. John Vervaeke talks a lot about dialogos. And what he means is something we have all tasted. The kind of conversation where we get to places we couldn't have got to on our own. And cultivating these kind of relationships, these kind of conversations is vital for a meaningful life. It is worth saying that bad relationships also narrow our perspective and lock us into bad frames. But the answer to this isn't to go it alone. 5, put life into practices. So all this sounds good, but how do we do it? A more meaningful life isn't cultivated by thinking about meaning, but by the habits and practices that make up our daily life and bring about a sense of aliveness into it. If you look at religious traditions, they do this well. They don't just have ideas, they also encourage habits and practices and rhythms. And for John Vervaeke, we build meaningful lives supported by an ecology of practices. That is a mix of activities that work together to help us grow in the different directions we need to. John has an interest in a bunch of specific practices: sitting meditation, martial arts, a group process called circling, these dialogos conversations. But his point isn't that these are the right practices. Part of your ecology could be walking in nature or climbing or playing a musical instrument or Sunday lunch with your family. You see, the point isn't just what you do, but how you do it. The intention and attention with which you participate turns activities into practices that support you to live meaningfully. And there's a very important point here. We're not looking for final or perfect sets of practices. We're looking to play with practices. And not play like treat carelessly, but play like we play an instrument or a game, where you're serious without being severe and sincere without being dogmatic. And ultimately, this serious play is how we learn things. how we enjoy the process of living meaningfully without stressing about whether we get it perfect, because meaningful life is not the kind of things that can be perfect. So there you have it, an appropriately imperfect sweep of the work of John Vervaeke in 10 minutes. He holds that there is a path to a more meaningful life, and to move along it, there are some suggestions. To relate beyond the intellectual, to see how you see, to cut through the bullshit, don't go it alone, and put life into practices. Special thanks to Robert, Paul, Alex and Alex for working with me on all of these ideas, and to David Fuller for starting the bigger conversation that brought a group of us together around the work of John Vervaeke. For other places to start exploring these ideas, you can just Google John Vervaeke, and I'll also put a few suggestions in the links below.